Assalamu alaikum dear students, how are you today? You will be fine, I hope so. Do you know, if you want to hop, run, walk, blink your eyes and even your heart beats and your stomach regurgitate, all these kind of movements cannot be possible without the muscles. So today's topic is about the muscles. What are the muscles and what is the anatomy of these muscles, as well as how muscles work? These all kind of questions are wrapped up in this lecture. So stay tuned and let's get started. First of all, we should know about the types of the muscles. Actually, there is a three basic type of muscle. Number one is cardiac muscle, number two smooth muscle, and number three is skeletal muscle. As our chapter emphasizes on a skeletal muscle, so I will discuss in this lecture about the skeletal muscles. As you can see that this muscle lie underneath the skin and it is responsible for the movements. We have fully control over them. Actually, the cardiac muscle, as the name indicates, make the big mass of the heart. Means that heart is basically composed of cardiac muscles and the heart beat due to the muscle action. The second one is smooth muscle. Actually, we have a peristaltic movement. You have learned it in a first year. Actually, that peristaltic movement is responsible for making our swallowed food in gastrointestinal tract from mouth to anus. So these kind of tubes, we can say the intestine as well as the blood vessels, they can also contract. It means that they have muscles. So smooth muscles basically form our tubular system. So this is a very basic and little introduction about the cardiac and smooth muscles. Actually, there are also terms. For example, muscle may be striated or voluntary. For example, if the muscle has strips or bands, then it is called striated. And when it has no such kind of bands, or you can say dhariya, then it is called non-striated. Smooth muscles are non-striated, while cardiac and skeletal muscles are striated muscles. And second term is voluntary or involuntary. If you have a control over your movement and the muscles are responsible for that movement, then those muscles are called voluntary muscles. For example, want to grab a glass full of water. You can or you may not. It means that you have fully control over your hand to grab the full of glass. So your muscle which are responsible for making such a movement is voluntary. But you cannot stop your heartbeat. If you want that my heart stop, it can't. It means that the muscles which are beating your heart are involuntary and you have no control over them, so they are involuntary in action. So these are simple terms you should know about the heart and tubular system, as well as the whole skeletal system which is responsible for your voluntary movement and have muscles. So we will look on that kind of muscles. So come to the main points. If we talk about a skeletal muscle, then simple definition is that the skeletal muscles are stripped, or you can say striated. And second one is voluntary in action. It means that skeletal muscles are stripped or striated and voluntary in action. यानी हम कह सकते हैं कि ये हमारे मुताबिक काम करते हैं. We have a control over the movements of these kind of muscles. Now the second point is that these muscles are attached with bones. So it is a very amazing to know that if you see the bone, for example, there is a bone in a blue color. I make it here to show you clearly. You can simply make it like this. So it is a articulation of the bone, and here is a stem-like structure. So we don't want to make a full bone, but I want to show you something which is amazing, is that there is a kind of fibers which originate from the bone. these are fibers which are non-elastic, made up of collagen fibers. तो ये था आपके पास सिंपल सा इंट्रोडक्शन। भाई ये क्या है? इट इज नॉट मसल, लेकिन क्या कर रहा है? ये मसल को जोड़ रहा है बोन के साथ। मसल कहाँ है? मसल आपको रेड कलर में दिखाया गया है। The red color muscles are joined with these kind of thing. This thing which I have made is called tendon. We join a muscle with bone. For example, it is a muscle. This muscle is also shown here. So we have to cut it into a cross-sectional area. In this way, you can see through it what is inside. And now we are going to start the anatomy of the muscle. What is inside the muscle? I label it as a muscle. Take your copy and notebook and note all these things. These all terms are very important. With the following section, you have to learn so much anatomical terminology, so it will confuse you if you will not write. Okay, so muscle, the tendon and the bone, all these things are here. Now you can see here I am making some kind of rings. It is not a ring, but actually these are the fibers. So I have to make it outside. For example, you think that I just grab a one fiber outside of the section. Actually, all fibers here are also called muscle fibers. So this muscle fiber ends like a cross section area again. This cross section area also has some kind of rings, indicated that there are also cross sections of different kind of fibers. So the same thing is here as this section indicates. But first of all, you have to learn the name of this fiber. It is called fascicle, or you can say it fasciculi. Now, the bone, tendon, the muscle, and in the muscle there is a fiber called fascicle. And in the fascicle there are also kind of muscles. I will show you here. This is called a muscle fiber, or you can say a muscle cell. This muscle cell looks like it is emerging from the fascicle. So first of all muscle, then fascicle, then another fiber called muscle cell or muscle fiber. I just named it. Now you were thinking that it is the end. No, it is not the end, but there are also some kind of fibers inside the muscle cell. I'm making it more prominent that you can see that these are the important structures. What they are, I will tell you later, but I have to share a piece of information regarding muscle cell. It is more important to know that the muscle cell is just like the ordinary cell, as the ordinary cell has cytoplasm or outer membrane such as cell membrane, and there is also network of channels called endoplasmic reticulum. This is a basic structure of normal cell, you know, but you will come to know that it is also interesting that the muscle fiber also has these kind of organelle inside it. But there is a difference in naming the organelles. So what are the names of the organelles and this cell structure? Actually, I just want to show you inside, so I have to remove the membrane. Suppose that we have make a cut and peeling its membrane out from this side. You can see it as. Now remove this section. In this way you can see here that it is the membrane from inside and it is its outer side. And now these black color fibers you can see running entire length of the muscle. They are not only here but the whole muscle, even from the beginning of our drawing. For example, we are making all these fibers here. Do you know that what are these black fibers? They are called Myofibril. I will tell you later about this, but I want to show you the anatomy of the muscle cell. In a cell, you will see a fluid. This fluid is just like a cytoplasm, but we call it here the cytoplasm, not the cytoplasm, but the sarcoplasm. So keep in your mind that we generally use a sarcomere, or the sarcoplasm, sarcoplasma, sarcoplasmic reticulum, sarcolemma. Why sarco? Actually, sarco is related to the skeletal muscle. As you see, or you remember in your last class that we use cardiac before all the terminology regarding or related to the heart. In the same way, we use hepatic to relate with the liver. In the same way, we use a word sarco. I think you understand. Now we come to the structure. A cell has endoplasmic reticulum. What are they? Actually, they are the network of channels. So you can make it just like that. It is a network of channel extending throughout the cell of the muscle fiber. But periodically, they just form a ring. As you can see, this is a ring. It means that all the endoplasmic reticulum like channels join to a main stream, or you can say it is a big tube. In the same way, here is also like this. You can make it more. You can say this, that they are not extending only in a longitudinal fashion, but they are also traveling transversely in the muscle cell. Do you know there is another kind of channel or a tube which I am showing in the color blue in between the endoplasmic reticulum like channels? Why I am calling endoplasmic reticulum like? Actually, here the name of this endoplasmic reticulum like structure is different, so we label that this network of channels called sarcoplasmic reticulum. It is a real name, not endoplasmic but sarcoplasmic reticulum. Do you know I have made another tube-like structure in between the sarcoplasmic reticulum which are extending transversely in the cell. These are called transverse tubule. It is very easy to learn that transverse section has tubule or tubular-like structure. We can show it here also, called transverse tubule. And in the short form, they are also called Ttubule. Actually, Ttubules are also extending throughout the cell, so make a system. That's why we also call it a tree or transverse tubule system. T system भी बोल सकते हैं, T system or transverse tubule system. Now you are aware of some terminologies. For example, if we start from the bone, after that tendon, which are non-elastic and made of collagen fiber. Collagen fibers are also a type of the proteinaceous tendon. Then muscle, the real body, which you can see after the skin, but in the muscle there is also kind of muscle fiber which is called fascicle or fasciculi. And next is muscle fiber or a muscle cell. Muscle cell has a cytoplasm, but we call it sarcoplasm. It has a network of channels. We call it sarcoplasmic reticulum. And there is a transverse tubule, so we call it T system or Ttubule. Do you know, very interesting information is also here, is that it has, or as it is cell, it has a nuclei, but not a nuclei, but there is a multi-nucleated system. Actually, when we talk about a smooth muscle, then it is uninuclear, but when we talk about the cardiac muscle and the skeletal muscle, they are multinucleated. So where are the nuclei? Here they are, 1 and 2. Now you will say that they are present on the skin or under the skin. The question is very simple. The nucleus is under the skin, as in the normal cell, the nuclei are present inside the cell, but there is a bulging. उभार होता है जो ऊपर नजर आ सकता है. Bulging which can be seen on the skin, but here are many nuclei present. So just label them, and you know a very important structure which is called mitochondria. Mitochondria are basically for the production of ATP. So mitochondria are also here. We label it. There are many mitochondria in the cell. Muscles are used for the movement, and for the movement there is a need of high concentration of energy. So mitochondria play the role to produce ATP, and in this sense ATP will provide energy to the muscle to move on. Okay, next thing to know is that there is a kind of 3 tubules. 2 are the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and in between are transverse tubule. These all combinedly called triad. ये triad मैं आपको आगे रख के बताऊंगा. I will tell you later what the triad is and how they work. Some information is also here, which is worth knowing is that, as I have already told you, that this is a membrane, and the membrane is called sarcolemma. Again, the word sarco is used, as here is a sarcoplasm. Do you know the sarcoplasm is somewhat different from the simple cytoplasm? Why? Sarcoplasm contain a large amount of glycogen and a special protein called myoglobin. Actually, glycogen is a stored food, so when we need a high amount of energy, then glycogen is used to produce glucose and eventually in ATP. While myoglobin, as we need oxygen to break the glucose, myoglobin is a special kind of protein which has a more tendency to store oxygen. Now you will say that from where the oxygen will come here to be stored? Actually, the muscle contain a high supply of blood vessels. So I make it here on the wall of the muscle fiber or muscle cell. These blood vessels supply oxygen. You can label it as capillary tube. Okay. Now we have almost completed a basic structure and anatomy of the muscle cell according to our book. Now we have to move on, because it is not the end. There are also some fibers inside the muscle fiber which are coming out. So let's have a look on that. I'm going to extend this structure over here. Do you know what they are called? I have told you. So I label it as Myofibril. Myofibril is actually a very interesting look, because when you will see here, you will observe light and dark bands which are extending throughout its length. So we call it striated or strip muscles too. And what are the light and dark bands? I will tell you in a following section. So we are making such bands. You can also make with me. It is easy, but it becomes difficult if you will lose your concentration. I'm creating another band here like this. These are special kinds of line. Just remember its name. It is called Z line or Z band. It is here, as well as here and here. But I am trying to understand you that two Z lines have something inside or in between them. You can make them like this, or even make a simple line in between the middle section. In the same way, the whole structure has the same look. This middle line is also called M line. So M line. Now you can see that there are some kind of the bands. some bands are darker as compared to other which are lighter. Now we will see which band is darker and why, and lighter why. For this we have to make this section outside here. So make a section. It is in a zigzag fashion, but we have a straight line to understand very clearly. This Z line and after the second Z line. Why we choose these Z lines? Actually, in between the Z line there is a segment called sarcomere. Sarcomere actually is a repeating pattern or a segment between the two Z lines, and it is making a whole fiber. So we choose Z lines. Now make other lines. For example, as I extend in a black color here, so I am extending here with a blue color. In the same way here, now make these green lines in between these blue lines. It is a very simple presentation. Actually, it is just like that. For example, there is a blue line, and around the blue line, the green line, 6 green lines are there. Okay, actually these blue and green lines represents a special kind of fibers. I'm gonna tell you later, but you think that one fiber is surrounded by 6 fiber, and every fiber surrounded by the 6 fibers and make such a complex structure over here. But we can understand by drawing simple things very clearly. So come to know about important terms of this structure. First of all, make that M line which cut the whole sarcomere into 2 halves, called M line. Now you should know the names of this blue line. These blue lines are coming here. These blue lines are represented from these lines. Okay, these blue lines are getting their way to out. In the same way that green lines are also coming from there. What the blue line called? They are called actin, and green ones are called myosin. They are commonly called, matlab myosin and actin are combinedly called myofilament. So don't confuse the two terms, myofibril and myofilament. They are different things. Myofibril originates or ends into new kind of filaments called myofilament, which are of 2 types. Number 1 actin, number 2 myosin. Actin are thin filament and myosin are thick filament. If we discuss some kind of characteristics of these fibers, then there is some kind of information written in a book. Actin are thin filament, 7 to 8 nanometer in diameter, while myosin is 16 nanometer in diameter. So they are called thick filaments, while the myofibril in diameter is about 1 to 2 micrometer. So understand these terms as well as their information. These kind of information may be asked in entrance test, so keep it in mind. Now come back to this sarcomere. This part from here is called a light part or a light band. This band is on the both sides. This band only contain actin myofibril. You can say actin myofilament, actin myofibril, or actin filaments only. So this region is called I band. In this way there are 2 I bands. Now we come to the middle section. In the middle section, as you can see, that there is a actin and myosin. Actin, myosin. One actin is surrounded by 6 myosin, so it is a very darker part at the both sides. Now you come to know that there is a dark as well as a light part. The dark part is called A band. In the A band, both the fibers or fibrils are there, actin and myosin. I band only contain actin, while the A band contain complete myosin, but partly actin fibers are also there. It means that there is some part which is overlapping. A band and I band. What are they? I of the I band stands for the isotropic. Isotropic material is that material which cannot polarize the visible light. And in the same way, the A band, A stands for anisotropic. Anisotropic means they can rotate a plane of polarized light, or they can polarize the visible light. So I just mentioned here polarizing and non-polarizing. I'm just separating it. You also don't confuse both the terms and remember it as carefully as you can. Now come again to the another band which is called H band or H zone. Actually here in between these two things, where only it is a part of A band, but the part where is only myofibril are there, they are called H zone. At the H zone there is also a lighter part where these lines are separated, shows light part which is I band, and after that a closed line shows dark band, means the myosin and actin fibril are both here, but in between these things there is H zone which only describes the myofibril in a green color and widely separated, so it is a light again. We can write here H zone is a light zone, but light zone is again dissected by the M line which make this region slightly darker. So light portion of H zone is halved by the dark section which is showing M line. So simple, there is a dark, lighter portion and make the muscle striated. So this is the whole structure of sarcomere, and sarcomere is repeating again and again in myofibril. And in myofibril there is two kind of filaments called actin and myosin. Now our next discussion is about what is the anatomy of the actin and myosin fibers. So let's have a look. First we describe the structure of the myosin, which is a thick filament. I just make it here. This is also a bundle of many polypeptide chains. Every two polypeptide chains are coiled together to make a head-like structure which we call a cross bridge. You can make like this. It is very simple. Label it as myosin and the cross bridges. These cross bridges are very important in contractility or the contraction of the muscle. Actually, these are the bridge between the two filaments, actin and myosin. So myosin filament has this bridge which can attach to the actin. And where is actin? You can see actin here in the blue color, and I have already mentioned that almost 6 filament surrounds the other filament, so I make it actin filament. To draw this, you just reference such a way that there are two lines which are coiled around each other. These are the reference lines only. What we are going to make? We are going to make a special kind of protein called actin protein. So actin filament is actually basically is made up of actin. These are actin molecule. It is the first, and I just erase the reference line. Now at the second line you make another bead-like structure to make another coiled structure. These actin coiled in such a way as you are making a strand of pearl. जैसे तस्बीह को अगर आप ऐसे coil कर दें तो ये इस तरह का स्ट्रक्चर बन जाएगा, ठीक है। तो ये आपको यहाँ पर बनाकर दिखाया गया है। अगर आपको समझ में ना आए तो आप वही जो आपको बना कर दी थी रेफरेंस लाइन ड्रॉ कर सकते हैं ताकि आपको समझ में आ जाए। ये पीछे से होता हुआ गया और इसके ऊपर से होता हुआ लिपटा और ऐसे करके आ गया। एनीहाउ देयर आर मेनी एक्टिन्स। अब आपने क्या करना है, फिर 2 धागे लेने हैं और उनको इसके गिर्द लपेटते जाना है। देखिए एक मैं यहाँ दिखाता हूँ आपको, और दूसरा धागा भी इसके साथ साथ चल रहा है। ये इसके पीछे से होता हुआ आया और यहाँ से होता हुआ आगे। तो आपको समझ में आ गया कि एक धागा ऊपर से होता हुआ आया और नीचे से चला गया, फिर एक और धागा उसके साथ साथ पीछे से होता हुआ आया और फिर वो आगे से होता हुआ चला गया। तो इस तरीके से आपने जो ये रेड कलर में धागा बनाया है ये कहलाता है ट्रोपोमाइसिन। इसको लेबल करते जाते हैं। फर्स्ट एक्टिन एंड सेकेंड इज ट्रोपोमाइसिन। एट ट्रोपोमाइसिन देयर आर another kind of protein. You can make it like this. Actually it is a complex of 3 kind of polypeptides. That's why I am just showing 3 kind of beads like this. Now these beads are linked with different structure. For example, in one of them is attached with actin, second is attached to tropomycin, and third one and the last one it will attach with a calcium ion. Calcium ion will come here and after that the magic will happen. So it is a basic structure of the actin and myosin, myofibril or the filaments. Now we are just going to tell you that how this cross bridges or this movement occurs. अब होता ये है कि जब कैल्शियम आयन इस ट्रोपोनिन के पास आते हैं और आके इससे अटैच्ड होते हैं तो होता ये है कि इस फाइबर में यानी एक्टिन फाइबर में, ये एक्टिन प्रोटीन है लेकिन ये जो पूरा फाइबर है ये एक्टिन फिलामेंट कहला रहा है या फाइबर कहला रहा है, इसमें थोड़ी सी तब्दीली पैदा होती है और इस तब्दीली के नतीजे में यहाँ पर एक स्पेशल किस्म की क्या है, there is a special site which is called a binding site. Binding site appears and after the appearance or the exposure, this globular head or the myosin globular heads attached with that in this way. Now what will happen? Not only the one but many bridges are formed because there are many myosin around the actin and many actin around the myosin. Now what will happen? The myosin will drag the actin towards the middle. For example, this is a myosin head. Myosin head will attach, move. जैसे ही ये move करेगा, as it moves, then these blue lines will go towards the middle as well as these lines too, and these blue lines or actin filament will move towards the middle of the sarcomere, and this is called a contraction. This contraction when happens, then what is a structure of that sarcomere? I'm gonna tell you. I'm going to make again this section वही Z lines, as there are 2 Z lines, 1 and 2. So 1 and second one is here. I'm gonna erase it a light and just writing it here, just not to distract. Now you can observe that the Z lines, for example, it is a Z line and it is also a Z line, which are far apart, but now I have made both Z lines closer to each other. So Z lines come close to each other and the I band here and I band here will shrink because the actin filament are going to meet up in the middle. Why? Because the myosin myofibril, after making globular head, they are contracting the muscle. As you can see that I band just come close. For example, I band will come to each other. But as we have already mentioned that I band is that area which is actually only actins or actin filament are there. But in this model you can see the actin is not alone. It means that I bands just going to shrink or going to disappear, but not fully. In the same way, the Z or H zone, actually H zone is also not there. So you can say that H zone disappear, I band reduces, and you can also say that A band is actually not shrink, not make big indifference. So there is no basic change in the A band, while M line is still between the whole sarcomere, and this sarcomere is looking smaller as compared to before. It means that there is changing. So this change feel in this kind of fiber. All the fiber get shrink because these Z lines are come closer. So whole the fiber, not here, but whole the muscle fiber is contracted. This contraction or sliding of the filament was given by two scientists, H. Huxley and A.F. Huxley. So this kind of sliding of the filament on each other as a whole in a muscle is called sliding filament model, and in this way the muscles are not shortened, they are contracted and then relaxed. Contraction and relax of the muscle will move the whole movement of the body, and you can also observe in that kind of muscles. For example, this muscle is called tricep and this muscle is called bicep. If you want to see mine, so this muscle which is here is tricep and it is bicep. When the bicep muscle contracts, the bending of the arm takes place, and in the same way the tricep relax, and when the tricep contract, the bicep relax and the straightening of arm takes place. In the same way, all the joint, elbow joint is working, the knee joint is also same works, and as a whole all joint work in this antagonistic movement, and whole body shows its magic of the movement. Okay, that is the biggest confusion. Then how contractility or the muscles contraction takes place, and it was explained by the scientist as I have mentioned. Now some kind of information is also remaining. Be patient. This is a very good lecture, will inform you all kind of piece of knowledge. Actually, we have studied the actin and myosin. I'm going to make it in a separate section. I have talked about the calcium. Calcium ions are very much of importance here. Actually, when we have to move or we have to move our muscles, then what happens? Actually, our brain gives signal. First, we have to think, then what we are going to do, and after that our planning makes the sense and our brain turns that plan into a signal. This signal is moved by motor neurons, and these motor neurons comes to the very specific point, and this is called neuromuscular junction. As you can see, there are two words, neuro and muscular. It means that two systems are contacting with each other, yani brain or the nervous system and the muscle simultaneously. Now, for example, this neurotransmitter junction means a junction or a point of contact. Where is the point of contact? For instance, you think so that motor neuron gives here a signal. It is a junction. A nucleus is here, mitochondria is here, and the tubule system is here. A whole cell can work. When there is a signal says contract. How contraction takes place? For example, this fiber tells the system, which is a kind of web-like structure in the whole cell called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum, you can see, is in the black color and is attached with the Ttubule. In the Ttubule, there is a lumen. Lumen means an empty space in the tube. When this tube or the tubular system is also called T system receives this signal, they change themselves in such a way that there are gates called calcium gates. Calcium gates open, calcium releases in the blood, and this calcium reaches to the inside of the muscle cell, and inside of the muscle cell is actin and myosin. For example, in the actin, when troponin receives this calcium, then the process takes place as I have already mentioned, that cross bridges will form. When these cross bridges are pushing the actin towards the middle, then they have to relax. It means that the bridges should be detached and again make a contraction. So this kind of effort needs ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You know, the ATP comes from the glucose, as the glucose is broken down in the mitochondria or with the help of mitochondria to produce energy. So mitochondria works, endoplasmic reticulum or sarcoplasmic reticulum works, Ttubule works, calcium are released in the sarcoplasm through sarcoplasm. It moves in extracellular spaces, so sarcoplasm works. Everything is working over here. It means that a kind of metabolism is taking place, and in this metabolism ATP is converted into ADP, and this hydrolysis of ATP will produce the phosphate. This phosphate make a cell rich in energy. So this energy is required to detach the globular head or cross bridges. Suppose that if this energy is not supplied, what will happen? These cross bridges will not detach and the contracted muscle will remain in the same position. This is called death of the cell, or it is also called rigor mortis. You notice when someone dies, if we will not strengthen him and make his fingers straight and close the eyelids, then they will not be able to move after some time, because rigor mortis takes place and no ATP is in the body after the death. Keep it in mind that rigor mortis can take place. So try to make a good habit of eating hygienic food to make it proper ATP production in your body. When we work, then sometimes we need speed work and sometimes slowly work. How it will happen? Actually, when the lesser amount of muscles contract, then the contraction is little bit slower, and when more fibers are contracted, then the sharp movements of muscles can take place. Anyhow, it is a vast knowledge, but in the book there is a kind of information about the none or all responses by the muscle fibers. Now the last point is there, how we craft energy. For example, you know, when glucose is broken down, it forms ATP. This process is called respiration, and respiration produces energy in the form of ATP. Respiration is of two types. Number one, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic in the absence of oxygen. So what is the point here? Actually, when you work daily as a routine work, then the oxygen is used to break glucose aerobically and produce the lesser amount of energy actually. But when you have to work hard by running or exercising, और कभी आपके पीछे कुत्ता लग जाए तो क्या होगा? आपको दिन कुछ ज़्यादा ही भागना पड़ जाएगा, या आप खेल कूद में ज़्यादा एनर्जी इस्तेमाल कर लेंगे, यानी आपको उस वक्त ज़्यादा एनर्जी चाहिए होगी. You need a much greater amount of energy than your daily routine. Then our body can go anaerobically. But in anaerobic respiration, the lactic acid is produced. Lactic acid is an acid. So large amount of acid will decrease the pH of the blood. And in this way, we will feel ache, pain in our muscles. So at that day, after running with dog, you have to sleep very well. Actually, when you will sleep and lactic acid is in your body, lactic acid will change. For example, there are 5 molecules of lactic acid. Then one of 5 will produce energy, as the lactic acid is also composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen as the glucose. So it decompose or break down in the same way as glucose, means aerobically. And after producing that energy, the remaining 4 out of 5 molecule will again change into glucose, and this glucose can be used to make ATP again. So lactic acid is a way when we need sudden energy or the energy rather than our routine work. So lactic acid or anaerobic respiration is important at that sense. But if you make your daily life so stronger and you run, you walk a lot, in this way you will be able to grab the more amount of oxygen in the form of myoglobin, which is in the muscle cell. And myoglobin will store more oxygen, and in this way, if you want to make faster exercise or doing a hard work, then that stored oxygen in the myoglobin will use to generate energy with the help of glucose aerobically. And in the same sense, there is no need of energy anaerobically. So make your life hygienic and exercise daily. In this way, you are not only the muscles, but the capillaries and the blood circulatory system will be stronger, more veins will be there, more arteries, number of muscles can be, or muscle fibers can be increased to make you stronger. That's the reason that the athletes have more power to do normal works as compared to the ordinary people. If there is more lactic acid in your body, it means that muscles are fatigued. It means that muscles have no ability to move. It is called muscle fatigue, and it is a disorder of the muscle. The disorder of the muscle is tetany, which is due to the low calcium level in the blood. As you can see, there is an importance of the calcium in the contractility of the muscle. If there is no calcium, then the muscle will not work, and muscle will be extra excited sometimes and will make such a movement, okay? Or there may be a spasms or the cramps in the muscles. Muscle will not move for a certain time. This time maybe some minutes or the hours. So cramp is and the disorder of the muscle. You feel it normally in the hip and the thigh joints or thigh muscles actually, and that joint will not move, and you will be not able to stand upright for a certain time. This condition is due to the low blood sugar level in the body, or the low sugar level in the blood, because there is no sugar, there is no glucose, no breakdown of glucose to make ATP, no ATP, then inability to make a contraction or detach the cross bridges. Electrolyte depletion and dehydration is also a cause of cramp. So try to make yourself, again I'm saying that, stronger man, and this knowledge can help you how you can make your muscles stronger and able to work. In the same way, the tetanus is also a very dangerous disease. Its mortality rate is 40%. If 100 persons in contact with that kind of disease, 40% will die, or 40 die in the 100. It means that tetanus is a dangerous disease, but it is usually dangerous in developing countries. In developed countries, it's too low in numbers. Okay, that is the little lecture on muscles anatomy, muscles physiology, how muscles work, and the side information about the muscles too. Now I'm going to say you bye, but you have to subscribe this channel if you find this information so helpful for you. Okay, bye bye.